Ancient cultures knew something about substances that modern medicine has completely forgotten, and it explains everything. By the end of this, you're going to understand why ceremonial psilocybin can dissolve trauma while weekend drinking compounds it, why ayahuasca ceremonies produce mystical breakthroughs while bar culture produces spiritual decay, why one class of substances has been used for healing for 9,000 years, and another class has been called, in spiritual texts across cultures, doors that open inward to things that should remain closed. This isn't about legalization or prohibition. This is about something our ancestors understood that we've systematically erased from consciousness, the metaphysical reality of what we invite in when we alter our state. And once you see it, you'll never look at substance use the same way again. Let's start with you. Maybe you've noticed that when you drink, there's a part of you that disappears. Not just your inhibitions or your judgments, something deeper. The witnessing self, the part that observes your own thoughts and says, wait, should I really send that text? Or is this actually what I want to do? That inner observer dims, and in its place something else rises. Something more reactive, more hungry, more disconnected from consequence. You've felt it. The personality that emerges after 3 drinks isn't just you relaxed, it's you with the executive function offline and something more primitive driving the car. Now contrast that with accounts from people who've sat in ceremony with psilocybin or ayahuasca. They report the exact opposite. The witnessing self doesn't disappear, it expands. They describe seeing their own patterns from outside themselves, watching their trauma responses like film footage, feeling profound compassion for their own suffering while simultaneously understanding its mechanics. They don't lose awareness, they gain it. They don't fragment, they integrate. And here's what nobody talks about. That difference isn't just pharmacological, it's ontological. It's about what these substances do to the boundary between your consciousness and everything else that exists in the unseen. In yogic philosophy, there's a classification system called the 3 gunas: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattvic substances elevate consciousness. Rajasic substances agitate it. Tamasic substances degrade it. And what determines the classification isn't the molecule itself, it's the doorway it opens. Psilocybin, used ceremonially, is considered sattvic. It illuminates. Alcohol, methamphetamine, opiates, used recreationally, these are tamasic. They obscure. They don't just alter your neurochemistry, they alter what you're receptive to. And if you think that sounds like superstition, stay with me, because the neuroscience is about to catch up with the metaphysics in a way that will rearrange how you see everything. The word alcohol itself comes from the Arabic alcohol, which originally meant a fine metallic powder used as coal eyeliner. But in alchemical texts, alco referred to something else, the essence that remains when the physical is burned away, the spirit, and not the spirit in a celebratory sense. In medieval grimoires and Islamic mystical warnings, alcohol was described as a body-eating spirit, an entity that consumes from the inside. Trace the etymology further, and you find gula demon that feeds on the dead. The name was never neutral, it was a warning. For thousands of years, spiritual traditions understood that certain substances don't just change how you feel, they change what has access to you. In Amazonian shamanic practice, ayahuasca is called the vine of the soul because it's understood to reveal what's hidden, but it's never taken casually. There are dietis weeks of preparation, abstinence, prayer. There are Icaro songs that protect the space. There are curanderos who've trained for decades to hold ceremony, because the medicine doesn't just open you to insight, It opens you, period. And in that openness, what you encounter depends on the container, the intention, the relationship you bring. The same vine that heals trauma in ceremony can terrify and destabilize someone who takes it at a party. Not because the molecule changed, because the context did. Because sacred technology, used without reverence, becomes a liability. The Shipibo have a saying, "The plant will teach you, but only if you ask the right question." Alcohol has no such requirement. It doesn't ask you to prepare. It doesn't require intention. It doesn't care if you're ready. And that's not freedom. That's danger. If you've stayed this far, I need to ask something of you. This channel exists because there are truths about healing, about addiction, about the unseen forces that shape human suffering that don't get spoken in clinical language. If what you're hearing resonates, if it's naming something you've felt but couldn't articulate, subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, because you need the reminder, because the algorithm doesn't favor this kind of content, and if you don't actively choose to see it, it will disappear from your feed. Hit subscribe, and let's keep going, because we're about to go deeper. Here's where the science meets the sacred in a way that should unsettle you. In 2011, Robin Carhart Harris at Imperial College London did fMRI scans of people on psilocybin. What he found was shocking. The default mode network, the brain's self-referential hub, the part that maintains your sense of I am me, separate from you, it didn't activate more. It quieted massively. The borders between brain regions broke down. Areas that normally don't talk to each other started communicating. The result? People reported ego dissolution, a sense of unity with all things, the temporary collapses of the illusion of separation. Now look at alcohol. Alcohol doesn't dissolve the ego. It inflates it or numbs it, depending on the dose. It doesn't create communication across brain regions. It suppresses them. The prefrontal cortex, your capacity for self-reflection, empathy, future planning, goes offline first. What rises in its absence? The limbic system, the reptilian brain, the part that knows only appetite and defense. You don't become more connected to the universe. You become more isolated inside your own reactivity. Neurologically, alcohol doesn't open you, it closes you. And here's what the studies won't tell you, but the mystics will. When you close yourself off from higher awareness and activate only the survival brain, you become vulnerable to lower influences. You become suggestible to shame, to rage, to despair, not as metaphor, as lived experience. Carl Jung once wrote, "Beware unearned wisdom." He was talking about shortcuts, about trying to access the numinous without doing the inner work. And that's the razor's edge with psychedelics. Used in ceremony, with intention, with integration support, they can catalyze profound healing. They can reveal the childhood wound beneath the addiction. They can reconnect you to awe, to love, to the reality that you are not your thoughts. But used recreationally, used to escape, used without a container, they can fragment. They can open doors that you don't have the skill to close. Because the spiritual realm is not indifferent. It is full of forces, some that heal, some that feed on suffering. And what determines what you encounter is not the molecule. It's the state of your soul when you arrive. If you think this sounds extreme, consider this. In every culture that uses entheogens ceremonially, from the Mazatic to the Santo Daime to the Native American church, there is one universal rule: respect. The medicine is never taken casually. It is never taken alone. It is approached with fasting, with prayer, with clear intention. Not because these cultures are superstitious, because they understand that these plants are not inert chemicals. They are intelligences. They are portals. and portals can be doorways to healing, or doorways to something that wears the mask of healing but leads somewhere else entirely. The difference is in how you approach. So what does it mean to approach substances sacredly? It means preparation. It means asking, why am I doing this? What am I seeking? Am I running towards something or away from something? It means community, people who know you, who will hold you accountable, who won't let you lie to yourself. It means integrations, sitting with what arises afterward, doing the work to embody the insight, not just chasing the high. And here's the hard part. It means that most recreational substance use fails every single one of these criteria. You drink because you're bored, because everyone else is, because you don't want to feel what you're feeling. You do it alone, in your apartment, scrolling your phone, and you wake up the next day and nothing has changed. Except now there's shame on top of the original pain. The ayahuasca ceremony ends with grounding, with tobacco, with songs that call you back into your body. The Psilocybin retreat includes days of integration circles where you process what you saw. The Native American church service lasts all night, and you are held by elders who have walked this path for generations. There is containment, there is structure, there is the understanding that you are not just altering your brain chemistry, you are engaging with forces that are older and larger than you. And without that framework, without that reverence, you are a child playing with a loaded gun. You might get lucky, or you might blow your foot off. And the culture that tells you it's all just molecules, that set and setting don't matter, that intention is woo-woo nonsense, that culture is lying to you. And it's lying because if you understood the metaphysical stakes, you'd stop being such an easy consumer. Here's the piece that brings it all together. Addiction is not a disease of the body, it's a disease of disconnection. Johann Hari got close when he said, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. But he didn't go far enough. The deepest disconnection isn't from other people. It's from your own soul. It's from the part of you that knows what you're here to do, that remembers what you came from, that feels the presence of something larger than this suffering. Tamasic substances, alcohol, meth, opiates used to numb, they sever that connection. They don't just dull the pain, they dull the signal. The quiet voice that says, this isn't you, you're meant for more, wake up. They replace that voice with static, and in the static, you become manageable, predictable, consumable. Sattvic substances, used ceremonially, do the opposite. They restore the signal. They dissolve the false self, the one built from trauma and conditioning and shaming, reveal what's underneath, which is not brokenness. It's wholeness that forgot itself. That's why people come out of psilocybin therapy and say, I remembered who I was before the world told me who to be. That's why ayahuasca ceremonies produce spontaneous forgiveness, uncontrollable weeping, visions of dead loved ones offering blessings. Not because the drug made them hallucinate, because the veil thinned and they touched something real. Something that has always been there, waiting. But here's the warning, and it's crucial. The same substance that heals in ceremony can harm outside of it. Psilocybin at a festival, chasing euphoria without grounding, it can destabilize. It can trigger psychosis in someone unprepared. It can open trauma without providing tools to integrate it. The medicine is not the magic. The container is, the intention is, the lineage is, the relationship you bring to the experience. And if you approach any consciousness-altering substance, plant medicine included, with the same carelessness you'd bring to a six-pack on a Friday night, you're not healing, you're gambling, and the house always wins. So what do you do with this? If you're struggling with alcohol, with pills, with anything that's become a way to disappear from yourself, start by asking what you're trying to escape. Not in a self-blaming way, in a curious way. What feeling are you avoiding? What truth are you not ready to face? And then ask, what would it look like to face it in community, in ceremony, in the presence of people who see your worth even when you can't? Maybe that's a 12-step meeting. Maybe that's a men's group. Maybe that's sitting with a trained therapist or a curandera or a priest. The form matters less than the intention to stop running, to stop numbing, to remember that you are not the pain. You are the awareness that holds the pain, and that awareness is indestructible. If you're drawn to plant medicine, approach it with the reverence it demands. Do your research, find legitimate ceremonial contexts. Prepare your body and your mind. Ask the question you most need answered. And when the medicine shows you something hard, don't turn away. That's where the healing lives, not in the bliss, in the willingness to see what you've been hiding from yourself and to love yourself anyway. And if you're someone who thinks all of this is superstition, that substances are just molecules and consciousness is just neurons firing, I'll leave you with this. You already know, deep down, that some highs make you feel more human and some make you feel less. Some mornings you wake up with clarity and some mornings you wake up with dread. Your body knows the difference. Your soul knows the difference. Maybe it's time to stop letting the culture that profits from your numbness tell you what's real. Maybe it's time to trust what you've always felt but were taught to or dismiss. Ancient cultures knew something we forgot, that the boundary between the sacred and the profane is not a line, it's a doorway. And what you bring through that doorway depends entirely on whether you knock or whether you break it down. Psychedelics, used with intention, knock. Alcohol, used to escape, breaks. And the wreckage that follows is not random. It's the natural consequence of dishonoring the threshold. So honor it, prepare, ask, listen. And if what you find on the other side terrifies you, good. That means you're finally paying attention. If this resonated, subscribe, because you'll need these reminders. And I'll be here when you do.